My name is Ronelle Blom. I'm the Dean of Research and Design at the Da Vinci Institute. And it's my pleasure to welcome you back. For most of you have been here before, and for those of you here for the first time, welcome. Hope you enjoy this afternoon's conversation. So we call it Curiosita because it is actually one of the Da Vinci principles, which refers to, and this is such a nice quote, an insatiably curious approach to life and an unrelenting quest for continuous learning. So that sets the tone for what we are trying to achieve with the Curiosita. So the Curiosita focuses on two main things. It always gives a PhD student an opportunity to talk about his studies, and for people in the room to help him, to ask him questions, to point out weaknesses, Alan. Not that I think you've got weaknesses, but to point out things that you might want to consider, and to just to give advice in general. And I think that's a very useful conversation to have with our PhD students. We try and give as many of our students an opportunity to present at one or other time. The second part of the conversation is usually an invited guest. I'll introduce you to our guest this afternoon. But the second part of the conversation in particular, we want to focus on the conceptual frame of the Da Vinci Institute, namely the management of technology, innovation, people and systems. So our guest speakers from now and in the future will all address the TIPS system or the TIPS conceptual frame in some other way. I won't say too much about that now because I'd like to introduce Roldo just now, but that is the second part for those of you not familiar with our format. So the first part then is dedicated to our student, and he's sitting here sweating, the poor man. And I like his bio because it's very short, and so it's very easy to read and to share all of it with you. Alan Mutuno, is that right? Yes. He's an entrepreneur, technology researcher, educator and author. Alan is a design thinking practitioner and vocational educational specialist, which is a particular interest of mine. In a career spanning several countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, Alan has distinguished himself by founding technology firms that implement solutions dedicated to solving Africa's twin challenge of poverty and education. For 20 years, Alan has been establishing and leading design and implementation teams to deliver business systems for private and public institutions in South Africa. He is the current CEO of the Institute for Advanced Learning and Education, a vocational education and training institute providing ICT training to unemployed youth in rural areas. I think your talk is going to be fascinating, but I will leave it over to you to talk us through. So everybody, and please welcome Alan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, are we all in the same room? All right, I will keep my voice a little bit softer. Good friends, thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure to speak to a room full of people. Every day we meet them, but this room is special because there are so many smart people here. For that, I would say I will keep myself composed, and I'm looking forward to us having a good engagement this afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Blom. Actually, I never get used to these curiosities. This is my second time to present my research at the Curiosita. The first time was in 2010, and then it was quite a difficult experience. Members actually tore through my propositions. But the fact that I emerged with the cum laude for that work was testimony to the view that for a researcher, there is beauty in hanging your work out there for critical input and for inquiring minds to give you more ideas on how it should be. Thank you so much. I have the same expectation with today's session. However, the world has since moved on. At the time, we had mobile phones, and IT is something we experienced at the workplace. It was about 3 years after the iPhone had been launched, and well, it felt like an expensive toy. But today, we are faced with a world that is being massively impacted by developments in IT. And as a Da Vinci graduate, I like to think of myself as an innovator. So today, my story is about invention and thinking. Inventors develop devices and come up with new ways of doing things, and philosophers think about feelings and experiences, but the two embody innovation. And we humans are always challenged to look at what is around us and identify the challenges and find ways of solving them. My problem today is one. I'll go to my script. Is that while society has experienced transformational changes due to people creatively using their mobile phones, a similar intensity has not been experienced in the field of education, particularly in tertiary education. So, using mobile phones to learn has been conceptualized as mobile learning, defined by Traxler in 2016 as knowledge production or sharing activity that occurs anywhere at any moment with the help of a mobile device. Currently, in South Africa, we have 60 million subscribers of mobile phones, and on the continent, this number is at 623 million subscribers. We're talking about unique subscribers. I believe everyone in this room possibly has a mobile phone. In trying to harness this opportunity, I encountered the following problems. We find that the education sector in South Africa, currently accounting for 30% of the total spend by government, is still incapable of meeting the educational needs of the 3.4 million youths in the age bracket of 18 to 25 who should be in school but are not actually acquiring any qualification. Local researchers, for instance, Dr. Blom, the one here, in 2015, documented that the inappropriate size and diversity of the post-school education and training sector, demonstrated by the annual scramble for the available spaces at higher educational institutions, suggests that there are not enough post-school opportunities, and consequently, there is need to build and equip more institutions. I would like to add that by the time I read Dr. Blom's work, I had not met her, neither was she at Da Vinci. Just a coincidence that I already had her work. Buthelezi in 2015 stated that the post-school educational sector has encountered an overwhelming contraction, leading to an inverted pyramid, where the public college base has been largely decreased, leaving the government university system to take charge of all post-secondary educational needs. In line with the above observations, others have advocated for the introduction of other learning systems, such as distance learning, electronic learning, and mobile learning that can be used to extend the post-school educational sector. Today, I concern myself with mobile learning. Several studies related to this phenomenon have been conducted on various fronts for IT consumption, such as awareness, readiness, acceptance, adoption, usage, and continuous usage. In reviewing the available literature, I did not come across one that offered a framework or a model to implement mobile learning for our education sector. And yet, several universities and private and public TVET colleges have implemented various forms of e-learning and mobile learning, though these remain underutilized. And yet, everyone says it's the next big thing. People have moved out of banking halls. We hail taxis on mobile phones. We're doing all sorts of things with our mobile phones. But we still have not observed the same enthusiasm for running on the go. Researchers and other stakeholders have offered little attention to investigating the factors that may impact on the implementation of mobile learning. Darrell in 2013, Injari Laru in 2015, state that there is a clear absence of theoretical procedures which could assist in the implementation of M-learning, which led Mayer in 2016 to concede that the absence of a framework for mobile learning may be slowing its adoption within the post-school setting. My study, therefore, seeks to develop a framework that can be used to guide the implementation of mobile learning within the post-school sector of South Africa. Hence my working title, A Framework for Mobile Learning in Post-School Education and Training. The journey to solving the above problem is premised on the understanding that this is a real problem that we are dealing with. 3.5 million people not in school, a contracting educational sector, and yet massive levels of unemployment and poverty is a real people problem. To solve this, as philosophers, we cannot use slogans or nice to hear words like vertical integration, alignment, rejuvenation, resuscitation, reformation, name it. We have to embark on an empirical study. That brings me to the ontology of my research. As has been mentioned in the bio, a generous one read by Dr. Brown, I'm the CEO of a company called Institute for Advanced Learning and Education. This is a private FET college. We've been going for 6 years now, during which time we have trained over 2,000 youths within the Republic on various ICT skills. We operate in the NQF3 and NQF level 5 band. So this is the sector that we're focusing on. In this time too, we have implemented a variety of IT systems to enable us do our work better, to deliver more knowledge to more people with less spend on the attendant campus setting, less spend on contact learning. Yeah, in our work, we continuously purchase a lot of applications, devices, and content to create learning experiences for our learners. But appropriating technologies created for other sectors, particularly mobile phones, were not created for education. So appropriating such technologies can be very expensive, and when you do, you've got no way of establishing viability until you experiment with it or implement with it. Is there a viable way of doing this? My view is that this basket of bits and bytes obscures us from finding a paved road to implementing mobile learning. The technical requirements for mobile learning are well documented, but there still appears to be no coherent plan for the implementation of these technologies for post-school learning, which leads me to the epistemology on how I'm going about gathering this new knowledge. Yeah, still guided by empiricism, I resort to the earlier philosophers, Auguste Comte, in the early 19th century, who argued that knowledge and understanding could only be reached by experience of the real world, and the information gathered should be used for the good of everybody. Comte and my ontology inspire me to study, to look for information, while keeping in mind, in view, my own experiences of this sector. This research is leading me to consider the competing views of science, as well as the multiple realities that exist related to the phenomenon of mobile learning. And in a way, and I hope, I'll be able to solve this people problem that we've identified. The aim of this study is to develop, and I repeat, an implementation framework for mobile learning. And in the search of this, I considered the following objectives. I'll list just but 4. To investigate the factors that influences the adoption and implementation of mobile learning environments within the post-school sector, to establish the relationships that exist between learning contexts, the learner's activities, and the mobile technology medium. The third is to identify the factors that influence the development of a mobile learning implementation framework. And lastly, to validate the developed framework for mobile learning. For the research methodology, I've opted to use a quantitative approach. And my reasons are quite few. One, as a sociologist, I'm more comfortable with quantitative methods of social research. I also believe that it offers the most coherent strategy of collecting information from a sample without regard to their expertise or experience with the phenomenon under study. And for that, I had to develop a questionnaire that I put out to the respondents, irrespective. My sample was within the institute that I lead. So I sampled 196 respondents from a population of 380 learners. And then I had 19 facilitators participating in the study. And the choice of sampling was purposive sampling. Why I chose that was because, one, the participants were just invited into the study. So if they would accept to take part, then I would interview them. If they don't, I don't do anything about it. So at this point, I will talk about some of the findings I've found in my research, which is still a work in progress. One is on the aspect of technology. I've so far found that the evolving developments in the mobile technology sphere, due to improved capabilities and ubiquity, will enhance e-learning applications by incorporating the capabilities of flexible, portable, and individualized learning. And yet, we also find that the lack of these capabilities can seriously affect the quality of engagement and lead to bad user experiences, which can be fatal, leading to rejection or acceptance of the platform. Furthermore, some of my findings related to device ownership and usage has been that at least 69% of the learners who participated in the research owned smartphones, while 31% owned feature phones. And they primarily access the internet using their mobile phones, even at the institute premises or back at home, which is quite a departure from an earlier trend when IT was mainly experienced in the corporate spaces, on office computers, on the work network. Now, this control that learners have, where they can control access, is their own device. For institutions, we've got to come up with a different way of getting them to engage with the phenomenon of mobile learning on their own devices, on their own network. Furthermore, we find that the avalanche of information, some uncensored and unedited, and the vast opportunities on the World Wide Web and on the connectivity that comes about as a result of mobile phones talking to each other, and the potential for abuse online emerges as a critical point for attention for both implementers and learners, underscoring the need to highlight digital literacy as a key aspect of any implementation effort, to equip learners with the ability to tell the good stuff from the bad stuff, to tell from the good people from the lunatics, if I would call them that. Yeah. Furthermore, among the findings, we find multi-institutional acceptance and support, where educational institutions from university to the lower level are implementing mobile learning. Some like the University of South Africa, have launched their own projects, while others, like the University of Cape Town, have partnered with technology firms to provide their academic services to the general public. Other telecom service providers like Telecom and Vodacom have actually launched their own e-learning portals that they make available freely to their subscribers. All these points to the realization that institutions have come to acknowledge that people can obtain knowledge and learn effectively if learning resources are portable and accessible. One of the seminal contributions of this research so far, from the finding, has been expanding the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. This was propounded by Venkatesh in 2003, who identified certain contracts that influence behavioral intention to use technology. He talked about performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social factors, and facilitating conditions. From my research, we have found that adding quality of service and personal innovativeness are also key to influencing the behavior of using any technology, in this case, mobile learning. The role of facilitators, as one of the finding from the research, is that they too play a significant role in promoting learners' acceptance of m-learning, because facilitators need to appreciate and understand and know how to use the underlying technologies of mobile learning before they can encourage their learners to do the same thing, which means they need to be involved in the design of mobile learning environments and in the implementation. In conclusion, friends, I want to share what mobile learning is not. When I was setting out for this research, my initial inclination was that I was doing an IT study. Being an IT person, I thought and I felt that I was going to find out. But the course of this journey, I've come to find that it's not a technology, it's not a brand or pedagogy or a method or a club. Mobile learning is simply the activities and experiences of several people scattered all over the world, their ideas, projects, and programs that have become robust, familiar, and universal. This study, therefore, seeks to distill some of the ideas, projects, and programs into a coherent framework that can be used to guide the implementation of mobile learning systems for post-school training in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me. And I've come to just a bit end of my presentation. So far, that is as far as I am with my journey. And I'll stop here and open the floor for questions so that I can get another kumrada.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm opening the floor for questions, comments, inputs.
In your research, did you explore any learning management systems? And if you did, what did you find? And if any, that worked successfully on the market?
But what I do find is that all these learning systems are promised to do the same thing. They're usually built from the same back end. If it's an open source system like Moodle, or others are from big players, big sort of firms like Oracle and so forth. But what I do find is that the implementation, I mean, the buying of the system and putting it down is an easy thing to do. What most institutions are unable to work out is how to integrate it in their current activities. So many times these systems fail because they're implemented in isolation, and the existing activities are not linked to it, and then become some sort of white elephant, or there is no user activity on the system. And after the initial excitement, when it's been bought and launched, a few months down the line, nobody uses the system, and they all resort back to that. Yeah. Okay.
There are lots of LMSs out there. There are lots of activities. Are you trying to get a framework that is going to have be a solution for the learners or for the organizations that are giving learning, or is it going to be something that's integrated so that it becomes a policy framework that people can adhere to, so that where mobile learning is applicable or physical learning is applicable, it is brought in and part of the framework?
Marisa has focused on, like I've mentioned, it's not a technology study. It's a way of doing things. Now, I'm encompassing all the elements of mobile learning, from the devices, the applications, the behavior, the awareness, the education. So I'm looking at developing a framework that holistically brings all these various components together, irrespective of the brand or the name on what it does, but to deliver that learning on the go. So the focus is on learning on the go. So eventually the frame will not be like a policy, won't be a way of doing things, but a guide that any institution that wants to launch or plans to launch mobile learning, they can follow from the experiences that I've gathered into this frame. Yeah, so it's supposed to benefit everybody, from the institution, from the learner, the facilitators. So in the model I've proposed, or the frame I've proposed, which is going to end up in the thesis, is built around the conditions that need to exist in that setting, and then the implementation of all these plethora of devices, software applications, and then the after setting with the support.
CPD.
Yes. So it's multifaceted for before, during, and after.
Okay, Emeka, and then Janet.
Hi. All right. Thanks for your presentation. I think your work is good, and I believe you are going to make a lot of impact with that. By the time you are through with it. What I observed is that you are talking about learning and learning and learning. You didn't speak much about teaching. Okay. So your emphasis is on learning, but in your answering of some of the questions, I think you have made some mention of something you call facilitation. Okay. Yeah, but I thought it is also important to talk about teaching or facilitation as part of the whatever thing you are talking about generally. I don't know whether you've maybe I should ask you first of all whether you know what they call online education. Most universities in America actually give you online MBA. Some of them are doing online PhD. So I don't know whether this is a bit different from that, or is it the same thing?
The first part of the question, I've looked at the facilitators and the role that they play in furthering mobile learning and learning aims. Now the other part, and that's where from terms of contribution, I would need to look more onto that. The other part is that I'll just contextualize how mobile learning comes about, because even in the literature there's a bit of confusion on what is e-learning and what's mobile learning. So what happens, initially we have learning itself as a construct for education. Then we had e-learning that emerged as an extension of learning from the campus environment. Now, mobile learning comes through as a subset of e-learning. So it evolves out of e-learning. But the difference is that e-learning takes it from the campus to any other place, mainly through computers, and it could be synchronous or asynchronous. But mobile learning takes learning out of the environment to any setting, and then there things start changing, right through the pedagogy, the content, the experience of the whatever they're dealing with in your time. So it's a movement. Yes.
So there is a distinct difference between e-learning, mobile learning, and online education.
No. Online education is e-learning.
Is e-learning.
Yeah.
Okay, they are the same thing.
And mobile learning is online education.
Online education.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any place where this has happened or has been implemented? Whether it's being implemented? You mentioned some people are doing it in University of Cape Town. Some people are doing it in one other university, and Vodacom has got a technological portal for people to access knowledge. I remember you mentioned that, but
Yeah.
are they doing? But this is like the technology they're going to use to do that, right? Yeah. Is there any place where e-learning is taking place right now, or online learning is taking place right now? Maybe it has happened for about 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, or something like that.
Yes.
Is anywhere?
Yeah, most
Not in South Africa. Maybe America or Europe, Asia, wherever.
Yeah, it's true. There's a wide-scale proliferation all over the world.
Okay.
About online learning, as you call it, which is or mobile.
Okay.
And this goes for almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
Right from University of Edinburgh, where Traxler actually works, and currently, what we have found, what I find in the research, is that all these implementations have certain levels of success. For many institutions, it's been terrible, and they've abandoned the effort.
Okay.
But they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time on it. Even the retention is very poor on online learning, while retention rates for contact learning are higher. So what we see now is a movement from being completely online to a blended mode, where learners will benefit from the campus environment and coming once in a while to solve problems, then do self-learning on their own. And that is what is now turning out.
Yeah, sorry about this dialogue. I'm trying to get at something, okay? So the reason why I'm asking you is that I'm trying to learn at the methodology that you have chosen.
Yeah.
You know, you've chosen a methodology where you say you're going to do quantitative methodology only. To get a point.
Yeah.
Now, but what you have just said now is that there are some places where it has been tried and it failed, and there are some places where it has been tried and it became a success, and we don't have it in South Africa yet. Not where it failed, not where it is successful, but you are trying to develop it for South African experience, right? So in that case, your methodology cannot be limited to quantitative methods. So you get to do some case study because you have to, because you're not doing something entirely new. Do you get a point? So you have to bring a case of what is happening somewhere else and do a case study of what happened where it was successful, a case of what happened where it is a failure. So you get to find out why it became a failure one place and why it became a success one place. And you think of probably local circumstances in South Africa, you know, assuming that we don't have any case of it in South Africa. So you got to bring the local circumstances in South Africa and perhaps do some degree of comparative analysis and see this is what happened in a place where it succeeded, this is what happened in a place where it failed. And this is the reason why it succeeded here, this is why it failed here. So in South African case, where you are going to bring this thing to, this is what you are going to have. So because there hasn't been any part of any of it happening in South Africa, you're not going to do a South African case study. Do you get the point? You are going to bring a case study of what is happening somewhere else. Because if you do it entirely on a quantitative or whatever, it looks as if you are copying from something happening somewhere else and bringing it over here and trying to claim it as if it's your own. So somebody will wonder what you learned from what is happening somewhere else. Do you get a point? So you just think about it, you know. And,
no, I'll think about it.
And
think about it. Thanks so much for your contribution. But also just to add on that, is that I've used a case study approach within one institute that I mentioned is between NQF 3 to 5. But why I chose that is that we have implemented mobile learning to a certain extent among our learners. So they have usage, experience, and awareness of it. So I now decided down into that organization. Yes. But thanks for the input to extend the inquiry into using qualitative methods.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and one little more thing is from your experience, you say they're teaching people almost everything. Can you do practical training on like electronics, engineering of all sorts through this kind of learning? Or can you do something that is narrative, descriptive, perhaps theoretical? Can you do electronic engineering, computer engineering, or mechanical engineering, civil engineering of the levels at which they exist in level 3 and level 5, where you are with this kind of learning?
Yeah, we are. Because
I'm asking, I'm not saying, I'm asking, is it possible?
yeah, it's
Do you have
possible.
cases of where it happened?
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay.
Because all the limitations are on the equipment being used and the content that's available. In many cases until now, I've come across instances where a platform was rolled out, but there was no content that is appropriate for to train an electrical engineer. There are no relevant simulations. They don't have, say, someone who's learning, they don't have access to the tools to actually do it by himself in his home, wherever they might be.
Yeah. Does it preclude physical contact between the learners and the facilitators at 100%?
Yeah.
100%. It doesn't allow. There's no form of physical contact.
No, the mobile learning and e-learning is actually built around collaboration.
That's a collaboration. That's physical
and
contact.
Co-creation of the knowledge.
That's physical contact. Okay.
Janet?
Thank you, Alan. I think obviously it's a cutting edge kind of study, which is very cool, and nice to see it happening in Africa. I had a comment that possibly related to James's question, and that was around the fact that it was only about halfway through your presentation that I got the realization that you're talking about an implementation framework. I don't think you used that word earlier on in the presentation. I think it made a significant difference. So my suggestion would be put that in right up front, because I think that that's key.
Okay.
And then my question also related to methodology. So again, it wasn't a word that you used, but you really are describing a system, and quite a complex system, and quite a system that's got lots of elements in it. And yet I don't know that your methodology, or my question is, what are the elements of the system, and how is your methodology going to ensure that you can capture all those elements of the system? Because the other thing is that you appear to be, and again, this is just from this last conversation, you appear to be saying you want to create a framework that would be relevant in any ML environment. So how are you going to actually get that information?
Over here.
I think there are two comparisons that you can make. I think one is a basic comparison between e-learning and traditional learning, and then between mobile learning and e-learning and traditional learning. I think the advantages of e-learning over traditional, or there are many advantages over traditional learning, yet it hasn't been widely adopted. Many institutions still carry on with traditional learning. I recall way back when I was at Standard Bank, in fact nearly 30 years ago, when computer-based training was introduced to replace the teacher-tell type training. And the improvements were dramatic. A typical 5-day training course to teach a banking person certain skills in a certain function, typical of 5-day course, say, in a fairly advanced topic. Traditionally it took 5 days. With computer-based training, many of the students were able to master the subject in 2 to 3 days, and nobody took longer than 4 days. The retention levels under traditional teaching was around about 85%. With computer-based training, it was in the 95%, so significantly better. Yet, we have still persisted with traditional type learning. And so that would be a question that you could ask. But now that you must do a comparison between mobile learning and e-learning. And that, of course, has certain advantages in that it's portable, it's always with the person. It probably has a disadvantage in that because it's in a less structured environment, there may be issues of motivation of the student. There may be the lack of peer group association. So those would be issues which would come into being. But let me say, I think your work is incredibly important. I mean, South Africa has a major skills deficit problem, and the use of a portable system to address this would be absolutely phenomenal in terms of making a structural change in our economy and addressing our training needs. I'm actually working on a project at the moment which is looking at mobile-based job seeking. Job search in South Africa is incredibly expensive for people coming out of school. There's a high level of disillusionment with training, and we're working on a feasibility study for a mobile job search. And the next step would be to link that from that, effectively using that same platform, to link that onto a training program, so that people who want to get to do a particular job but don't have the skills can then link in, and then it may be some scope for working on that together at a later stage. So, yeah.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah, effectively
Okay.
what we're trying to do, I like to say, it's like a Tinder for job seekers.
Yes. My question is, and I think it links with what some of the people have been raising, is, in a sense, what are the dangers of mobile learning? I mean, I can imagine that the millennials love it, and they would readily accept, using their phones to learn, because they do everything else on their phones. So in your findings, did you find that there's any kind of a red flag that comes up and says, "Whoa, okay, so this is something we need to look at"?
Yeah, there are a lot of red flags, because the availability or the proliferation of mobile phones, and what people are using them for, hasn't gone yet to education, number one.
That's it.
So when it does, there's no preparation for it.
Okay.
The implementers don't look at the readiness of the would-be users of the system, and then also the acceptance of these users of this system. Then the other element is that the danger of institutions that are there's a problem of when institutions implement mobile learning systems. They introduce it as an extension of their activities as they are, and then becomes like a side shot to assist. So in the end, only parts of what has been acquired are used. Sending the SMS, downloading your marks, or uploading your coursework, but not to engage with the acquiring of the knowledge.
Okay.
So I would say there are a lot of potholes, and the study is to pave the way. You guys put what app you're going to use, or what device, or what dangers that you're facing, but looking at the user requirements on the side of the learners, and the intention for the learning as to
Just an extension to that is that, yes, I understand that those are some of the dangers, but you're still thinking in terms of what are the dangers for implementation. I'm thinking of what are the dangers for authenticity, what are the dangers for assessment, what are the dangers for becoming, somebody mentioned here, the online MBA type of the MBA mole, not that that's what you're referring to. But I mean, there are those dangers of, is it actually the student doing the work, or is it somebody else? I mean, what are those dangers that I can see in the design of the program that needs to take consideration?
Yeah. I'm looking at more in the systemic thinking.
Yes.
That there are unintended consequences of everything. Even the current ecosystem that we have had its dangers.
Yes.
But because they kept refining and researching through it, so I believe this study will open opportunities for other studies. People who look at the information security part of mobile learning as a separate study that requires new thinking and new invention. Others look at the pedagogy, the way of teaching, so that people can actually follow and acquire the knowledge. While others look at assessments. The path for inquiry is never ending.
No, sure. So you're not specifically looking at that?
No.
Okay.
Only a framework.
Okay.
A guide that institutions will put on the board and say, okay, let us try this.
Yes. It's a conceptual frame.
Yes.
Maybe the study is not going to address my question. If you look at the current discussions around decolonizing education, to what extent does this allow for different facilitators, content creators, teachers, I don't know what we'll call them, to come into the space so that those learners are not just getting the colonized content that is what is currently in place, if one was to use the word. Do you find that you will be able to allow the teaching, the content creation to be decolonized? And the other part of it is to say, what does industry want? Where does industry input? What learning should actually go? Because if the platform does not teach the right thing, we could actually be just perpetuating the current education that in the beginning you said is quite limiting and limited in application for the kind of economy we need going forward.
Mobile learning offers tremendous opportunities for co-creation of knowledge. Because it's built on in real time, there's collaboration, it's very disruptive. We're talking about the end of textbooks, first of all. So we're talking about knowledge being generated in real time. And learners actually creating content and putting it in their chat forums within that frame of learning, aspects that deal with decolonizing, learning a new language in their own way, bouncing off ideas. They can do it anytime in the taxi, in the bus, and everywhere. The whole concept of mobile learning is it flips the whole learning system as we know it. And that means that knowledge will not be the preserve of the facilitator anymore. The facilitator engages with people as collaborators. So I would like to thank you for the comment.
Yes.
That it's,
Thank you. Okay, final one.
I just wanted to draw back in the recent crisis we had of fees must fall. Universities were forced to close. And when we had crisis meetings, we asked ourselves, how are we going to reach students? Everybody's hand was up. We post the worker on My Tutor, we post the worker on Moodle, we post the worker on Blackboard and everything. Then I told the people who were in the meeting, first close your eyes and see South Africa beyond Gauteng. Look at South Africa in Limpopo. Look in Limpopo beyond Polokwane. Go deep in Zanin, Guyana and the other villages. Do you think a student from those areas would have access to the internet, to access My Tutor? Do you think a student in those areas would have access to uninterrupted electricity supply? Everybody was dumbfounded. That is the problem of e-learning. Because we, almost in every university has implemented learning management systems. But just jump on a bandwagon without looking beyond what happens in the next morning when the student cannot be reached out of campus. Look at the beauty of mobile learning. If implemented wisely, we have that potential of reaching the student. Then it goes back to learning and teaching. The two, most cases we see they are inseparable. Because when you talk of learning, learning cannot take place without communicating, without collaborating, without teaching. Much as we say learning, then we assume that the teaching has taken place and the collaboration is continuous. Then when there is continuous collaboration, then there is continuous learning. And in order to have that, you must be having a chain which does not break. You must be having a chain beyond Santoni. You must be having a chain beyond Polokwane town. You must be having a chain that connects the instructor to the learner. And that is mobile one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, final one, please. We've got to stop. We have our next session that will start shortly.
Probably you said that it was purposive. I would argue and say maybe it was convenient. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. All right, Alan, that is absolutely fascinating. And as you can see, there's so much interest in the room around your study that we're all looking forward to. Are you going to submit this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, he's going to submit this. Yeah. Okay, we'll put you into contact with all kinds of people. But well done. That is really, really exciting. Very, very interesting. And I can't wait to read it. Thank you very much.